Welcome back to a new video, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can write your own multimodal application with Jetpack Compose. So we will learn a lot of things, so I'm going to tell you one by one what are the things you will learn in this video. So first thing, you will learn how to manage your build.gradle dependencies, because it is a super important. If you don't manage your build.gradle dependencies properly, you're gonna copy paste that dependency again and again. So it is not recommended way, because in multimodal application we have a lot of modules and each module contains its own build.gradle file. So at some point we have to manage this thing at one place and gonna reuse that dependencies again and again in our build.gradle file. So we will learn how to do this efficiently. Second things, you will learn how to use clean architecture with model view model pattern. So we'll learn how to do this in multimodal application. Apart from this, at some point of your application you have to navigate from your one feature to another feature, and it is a typical thing for those who never done multimodal programming. So we'll see how to do navigation from one feature to another feature, which is as I say, it is a important thing, because without navigation your application will not never create. After this we'll see how to use dagger hilt in our multimodal application, because we have to manage our dependencies properly. So we use dependency injection framework, and dagger hilt is our dependency injection framework. So we learn how to use dagger hilt in our multimodal application. We use retrofit, use flow, Kotlin coroutine, and also we see how to manage our Jetpack Compose screen state management. So we learn a lot of things, and please stuck this video to the end and you will see how to do all this thing in our multimodal application. Our first feature, in this feature we have a search bar where you can search your movies. So like I'm gonna type Harry. Now here you can see we saw a list of movies which is coming from our backend. Okay, so this is a feature we are going to build in our first video. So let's get started. We are going to look how to manage our build.gradle dependencies in our multimodal application. So first you need to create a new project. So for that, go to file, new project, choose empty compose activity, because we are going to use Jetpack Compose for our UI. Click on next. Here you need to fill the information of your application, like name, package name, location, what is your minimum SDK, all these stuffs. Lastly, you just simply click on this finish button and it will generate a new project for you. So I had already created a new project, so I'm not gonna create a new project again. So I simply cancel this, and this is my project. Now we need to manage our dependencies. So for managing our dependencies, just change the view of your project, Android to project mode, and here create a new directory, and directory name is build source, and within this we're gonna create a new file naming build.gradle.kts, and make sure the naming is super important, because if you spell wrong these names then it won't work basically. So first you need to write some plugins, and within this plugin write this line Kotlin DSL, and after that we have repositories. So within these repositories I use Maven Central, and simply sync this thing. Now you can see everything is recognizable by our Android Studio. Here we have Kotlin DSL, repositories, and this build source is also change in a form of module. So this build source is present in our root level. That is why it is accessible from every build.gradle for each module. Now within this, just going to create a new directory, and the directory name is source main Java. Within this you need to create a new Kotlin file, and the file name is dependencies. To you, if you prefer any other kind of name you will provide, no problem at all. Dependencies. So this one is my preferable name, that is why I give the dependencies name. So within this, what I'm gonna do, I'm creating object naming version, and we have our dependencies specific objects. Like if we have a dagger hilt dependency, so I provide object name dagger hilt. Okay, so now I'm gonna change this view mode from project to Android and jump into our module app, and here you can see we have a lot of dependencies. So I just pick one of them and use this thing in our, and use this dependency in our here file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new object depths. Within this I'm gonna create a const while naming core and paste our dependency over here. So just convert this thing into a string and take out this version from here and use that version in our version object. So paste this thing, convert this into a string, and now it's time to use this version name in our depths object core dependency. Now I'm gonna use this core in our module app level. So replace this thing with depths.core. Sync your project and you will see after the completion of this sync, this thing is recognizable by our build.gradle. So wait for a moment. So here you can see our core is now recognizable by our build.gradle. So like this, we have a lot of dependencies. So I'm gonna convert these dependencies in this form. But before that, within our dependency, I'm gonna copy paste a few dependencies which I wanna use in this project. All these dependencies I'm gonna use in this project. There are some dependencies which I extra put in this file because I might use this file in my other projects too. So that is why I put a lot of dependencies in here. So if you are gonna use all these things, you can use it, no problem. But still I'm pasting all of this thing in this file. Okay. Now jump into our module app level, and here I'm gonna replace all this implementation with our depths, or you can say our dependencies file libraries. So I replace everything. So now it's time to sync our project and see if we got any error or not. So now our sync is complete and you can see there will be no error. So it will say to migrate our project. So just click on this run migration and it will migrate your Kotlin code from previous version to newer version. And one more thing, go to your build.gradle root level, or you can say project level. Here you need to change the compose UI version because I'm gonna use the latest one, which is 1.4.0 alpha 05 I think. And for this compose UI version, you have at least 1.8.0 Kotlin version, and if you change this thing, you have to change your Kotlin compile extension version 2. So change this thing from 1.2.0 to 1.4.0 and sync your project. Our Gradle build successfully sync, and here you can see the same dialog. So again run your migration. So our syncing is complete. Now we are going to create few modules for our project. So we have three type of modularization. So first one is layer wise modularization, second one is feature wise, and the third one is combine. The combining of these two is the third one. So the layer wise modularization, we have three modules: data layer, domain layer, and our UI layer. Second one is feature wise modularization, in which we have a feature, like a module is representing a feature, like we have any kind of authentication in our application. So we create a different module naming auth, and within this we have managing our authentication system. So each feature is represented by a single module. Now the third one is basically the combination of these two. So basically we have a feature like you have authentication, and within this authentication we have three layers: data, domain, UI. So the combination of these two is what we are going to use in this project. So let's get started and create some modules in order to understand how we actually use this thing and how to create that modularization in our application. So for this, go to file, new, select new module, go to Android library, and here make sure to give a module name. So the first module which I'm gonna create is feature. Okay, within this feature we have our movie feature, and within this movie feature we have data layer, domain layer, and UI layer. So first thing, I'm gonna create my data layer, and within this package name I want to change the example to feature. And what feature? Feature dot movie dot data. Okay, uncheck this and finish it. So this one is our first module, movie, and within this movie feature we have our data layer. Now we want to create two more layer, UI layer and our domain layer. So go to your feature, here we have a movie and our data layer within this. Now create our domain layer and the presentation layer. So go to module, Android library, feature, movie, and within this we have our domain layer, and replace this example with feature movie domain, uncheck this, finish it. So now I'm gonna create my UI layer. So go to your module, Android library, remove this thing with UI, and replace this example with feature movie. So feature dot movie UI, uncheck this, finish it. So we have feature naming movie, and within this we have three layer: data layer, domain layer, and UI layer. Like this, we have one more feature which is actually used to show the movie details to our user. So for this, create a new module and go to your Android library, replace this my library with movie underscore details, and replace this example with feature movie details, and within this we have our data layer actually. Alright, so uncheck this, finish it. Alright, so here you can see we have our data layer. Like this, we have our domain and UI layers. So module, Android library, here we have our domain, and replace this example with feature dot movie details. Uncheck this, finish it. Okay, like this we have our UI layer. So generate a new module for our UI. Go to Android library, remove this my library to UI, and replace this example with feature dot movie details. Uncheck this, finish it. Alright, so now we have two feature, movie and movie details, within our feature. Now it's time to create a new module for our core. So select new module, go to Android library, and here I'm gonna create core module. So within this core we have our network thing. So we have our networks thing, like data providers we have in this particular module, and the package name is actually not .com.example.network, it is com.core.network. Uncheck this, finish it. So it will generate a new module naming core, and within this we have our network module, not package. Right, so within this core I'm going to create one more module for our common use case, and the module name is common. Replace this example with core common, uncheck this thing, and lastly finish it. Alright, so now we have network module, common module, and we need to create one more module for naming feature API. So this is used in order to navigate from one screen to another screen. So Android library, and the name is feature underscore API. Change this example to core. Uncheck this and finish it. So we had already created all of our modules which we need in our project. Okay, so now we will move with our network module. So within our network module we have data providers which actually consume our REST API to get data from web service. So first thing, I will show you the REST APIs which we will consume in this application. So this is our website, so the moviedb.org. So I'm going to consume here moviedb APIs. So we have these two APIs. Okay, so the first API is actually returning us a list of movies, and the second API is return back the movie details of a particular movie. Okay, so you need an API key in order to access these APIs. So first you register yourself, and after that click on this avatar, go to settings, and here you see API. So click on this API, generate your own API key, and after that API key you will use this REST APIs because it require API key to access these APIs. So I'm gonna copy these two APIs and come back in our project, go in our network module. So we will use retrofit for integrating the REST API. So first thing, I wanna add dependencies in our build.gradle for core network module. So here I am gonna implement our retrofit dependencies. So retrofit, and we require two more things. The first one is OKHTTP, and the second one is JSON converter. Okay, so we use JSON converter factory to create our JSON response to model classes. Our Cradle have been synced. I also add Dagger Hill dependency and its plugin on the build.gradle network level and on the project level. Okay, and sync your project. You will now able to use Dagger Hill in your network module. So go back in your network module and I'm gonna create my first interface, which is API service, and this interface is actually used by retrofit to implement the logic using which he got the response from our REST API. So the first method is http get method, suspend function get movie list, and the return type is not determined yet. So in order to create a data class, go back to your response, copy the response, come back in your project and create a new package naming model. Within this model, I'm gonna use this third-party plugin, copy paste my all the response and give the name to your data class which you will generate. Okay, so movie list response. So within this we got two data classes. The first one is movie list response and the second one is result. So actually this result represent our movie, so I'm gonna change the name to movie DTO. Okay, go back to your API service and now the return type is movie list response, but we don't know from where we got the response. So we have to connect this function, or you can say method, with our REST API. So we will provide the information of our REST API in this block. So go back, copy this, come back to your project, and I'm gonna paste that REST API here. So this is our base URL and rest all the thing is endpoint. So copy your endpoint, go to get, paste here, and we have two queries, API key and the query. So I'm generating two queries for them. So the first one is our API key type string, and the second one is our query, which actually query queue in a form of string. Okay, so this is a function and the implementation is written by our retrofit library, so we don't take care of the implementation thing. Now we had set up our Dagger Hill in our network module, so I'm gonna create a new package and the package name is DI. Within this I'm gonna create module for our Dagger Hill. So I'm gonna call this network module. This is an object and we use install in and use singleton component class. This is a module, so in order to tell our Dagger this is a module, annotate this object with module. Okay, now in order to provide dependency, use provide annotation and provide. So I'm gonna provide my API service by using this function. So API service return, as I said, the implementation of API service is gonna return by our retrofit. So we use a retrofit builder, and here we need to pass our base URL. So go back to your API service and we have our base URL from here to here. Copy this, paste here, and then we also need converter factory. So this converter factory is used to convert our JSON response to this data class. So basically it will map our JSON to these model classes. Okay, so we have to add that converter factory here. So JSON converter factory dot create. Okay, so lastly I'm gonna build my retrofit object, and by using this retrofit object I'm gonna write my API service implementation. Okay, now it's time to create our data providers. So I'm gonna create a new package and the package name is data providers. Within the data provider I'm gonna create a class and the class name will be movie data providers, and within this I'm gonna inject my API service, import this inject notation. Within this I'm gonna create a suspend function naming get movie list, and here I'm gonna pass my API key, which is a form of string, and our query. By using our API service I'm gonna call my get movie list, pass our API key in here and our query. Okay, now we will use this data providers in our data module. So this is all for our network module. What we had do in this network module. First, we will generate our API service. Here we write a function. This function is going to be implemented by our retrofit library, so we don't take care of the implementation part. We have our model classes like movie so this will contain the movie details. This is our movie list response, which actually replicating our JSON response. And we have our Dagger Hill setup, so we generate a network module, and within this network module we had a provide function. So basically it will provide our API service implementation. So this API service implementation is gonna return by our retrofit. So this is all for our network module. Now we will continue with our first feature, which is movie feature. So go to your feature. We have two module, movie and movie details. Go to your movie module, and here you will see three layers: data layer, domain layer, and UI layer. So the responsibility of this layer are something like this. So data layer is responsible for getting data, either it's from local database or from web service or REST API. Second one is our domain layer. So domain layer is used to write our use cases. In that we write our business logic. Okay. Third layer is our UI layer. So in UI layer we have our screens or activity or fragment. In our case we use Jetpack Compose, so we have our screens in UI layer, and also we have our view model. So view model is used to write presentation logic, like if you write any kind of validation or all those things is present in your view model, and your screen is actually representing your data to the user. Okay, so this is a simple responsibility of our layers. So what I'm gonna do, I will continue with our data module. So within our data module I'm gonna create few packages. So the first package is our dependency injection. Second one is our repository implementation. Our repository package, we write the implementation of repository which is present in our domain layer. Okay, so domain layer is simply write the interface, repository interface, and we will implement that interface in our data layer. All right, so now it's time to jump in our domain layer, and within our domain layer I'm gonna create few packages. So the first package is model. So this model is called domain layer model, and this model is actually used in our UI layer. We didn't use data transfer object in our domain layer. We use domain layer models in our domain layer, and this model is actually used in our UI layer. After this I'm going to create one more package naming repository, so it will contain our repository interface. And lastly I think we have our use cases. Okay, so in our repository I'm going to write my movie repository interface. So movie repository, this is an interface, and within this interface we have suspend function get movie list. It has API key and a query. Okay, the return type is very simple, list of movie. So this movie is actually a domain layer object, domain layer data class. So we will create this movie in our model. So this is a data class, and the naming of this data class is movie, and within this I'm gonna have my image URL, because my first screen is only show the image to our user. Okay, this is why I use image URL. All right, so now go back to your movie repository, import this movie. Now we will implement this interface in our data layer. So for that, go to your repository, right click, create a new class, and the class name is movie repo implementation. Use your movie repository. This is not accessible because it present in a different module. So in order to access this movie repository, we need to connect this data layer with our domain layer. So go to your build.gdl of data layer. Okay, this one, and here I'm gonna write a simple line which is used to connect this module to our domain layer module. So we have feature, within feature we have our movie feature, and we have domain layer within this movie module. So sync now, go back to your movie repository implementation. Now you will see that this movie repository is accessible after the sync. So import this, implement its member functions. So we have get movie list. So we will use our data providers in order to take data from web service. So first I'm gonna use inject constructor private val movie data providers. This is not accessible again because network module is separate and data layer is not know about network module. So in order to tell our data layer that you use network module for this movie data providers, go your build.gradle and duplicate this. We have core, within core we have our network, and within network we have our data providers. So sync now, go back to your repository implementation, and after the sync you will see that movie data providers is available. So import this. Now here I'm gonna use return keyword, movie data providers, get movie list, use your API key and query, and it is giving me an error because of the type. So required type is list of movie, but it will return the movie list response. So what I will do, I will write a mapper in order to map this with this. So go here within our data layer, not domain layer. Within our data layer I'm gonna create a package, and the package name is mapper, and within this mapper I'm gonna create a simple file, and the file name is mapper. Within this file I'm gonna create a extension function movie list response to domain movie list. Return type is list of movie. Use return keyword result, and I'm gonna use map, generate a movie object, and within this I'm gonna pass the image poster path. Okay, so by doing this you actually convert movie list response to list of movies. Now I'm gonna use this in our movie repository implementation. So to domain movie list. Okay, now it is not giving me an error. Now go back to your, I think it will. Okay, so inject is not recognizable because of dagger hilt is not configure in this module. So we need to configure the dagger hilt for this module. So in order to do this, go to your build.gradle of your data layer, and here need to implement dagger hilt dependencies. So dagger hilt and then its compiler. So compiler is used with capt, and on the top you need to add the plugins. So in order to add plugin, we already did this thing in our network module. So go there and copy these two things, come back to your data layer, paste here, sync now, and import this inject. Okay, now it's time to write our module for dagger hilt. So I'm gonna create a data layer module, install in with singleton component, annotate this thing with module because it represents a module for dagger hilt, and here I'm gonna provide my repository implementation. So provide movie repo, and the return type is movie repository, return movie repository implementation. Its requirement is movie data providers. So go to your network module and check whether you provide this dependency or not. I think you will not provide this dependency, so write a provide annotation, provide data, or you can say movie data provider. Okay, so this data provider require API service, so pass this API service, and return type is movie data providers, pass API service. So this is a return type. Okay, now jump back to your data layer module, and this time use movie data providers as a argument, and simply use this in our movie repository implementation. So now it is able to inject movie repository. Okay, so yeah, that's it for our data layer of movie feature. Okay, so now it's time to jump in our domain layer. So within our domain layer we have use cases, so it's time to write use cases. So the first use case is get movie list use case. Okay, within this I'm using operator function invoke, and we need to pass API key and the query. I'm gonna use flow. So the return type of flow is, so in order to manage our UI we create a sealed class. So I'm gonna create that sealed class in our common module, because this sealed class is gonna used for each feature. That is why I will create this in our common module. So the name of this file is UI event, and this is a sealed class. Make sure this is a generic class type T, and within this I'm gonna create my first UI event, which is a loading. Okay, extend this with UI event. Like this we have success and we need to pass data. Okay, this data is going to be passed with our UI event, so that is why I'm gonna make while data, which is a type of T, and its initial value is null. Second we have message, so message is type of string, and initially this thing is also null. So now it's time to use our success event. So in our success we get data from our REST API or data layer, so that data is going to be passed in our UI event. Like this we have error, and in error we receive few message. Pass those message in our UI event. Okay, so this is our simple UI event in order to manage our UI. Now in order to access this UI event, first I will go in my domain layer build.gradle, so this one, and here I need to connect implementation project and the core common. Sync now. After sync you will able to use UI event in this module. Go back to your get movie list use case, and here you see, okay, so you got the UI event and the type is list of movie. Alright, so within our flow we are gonna use movie repository. So within our use case I'm gonna inject movie repository, so movie repository, but this inject is not recognizable because we didn't set up our dagger head for this module. So in order to set up, go to your data layer build.gradle, copy these dependencies, paste in your domain layer dependencies, and on the top you have these two plugins. Copy this plugin, paste this plugin in your domain layer and sync now. Okay, after syncing go to your get movie list use case and import this inject. Alright, so now we will use movie repository in this flow. Okay, so this flow has catch. If anything goes wrong, then this catch block will execute. So in this scenario I'm gonna emit the UI event dot error and pass the message. Okay, and I wanna run this flow on dispatcher IO. Okay, and on the top of the block I'm gonna emit our UI event dot success. I'm gonna consume my movie repository get movie list, pass our API key and the query. Okay, so this is our implementation of invoke. Before sending our success event we have to send the loading event. So loading, which is coming from UI event. So by using this event we actually show a progress bar or any kind of thing which you want to do during loading. So this is a complete implementation of our use case. Now I'm gonna create a dependency injection package for this domain module. Our dependency injection, I'm gonna create a new object and the object name is domain layer module. Install in singleton component. Annotate this thing with module, and within this I'm gonna write a provide function which will provide our use case. So get movie list use case. Okay, so return type is get movie list use case, return get movie list use case, and this requirement is movie repository, so pass movie repository and consume movie repository in our get movie list use case. Now this movie repository is going to be provided by our data layer dependency injection module, so over here. Alright, so by doing this I think we successfully complete our this feature, movie feature, data layer and domain layer. Now it's time to implement our UI layer. So now it's time to our UI layer implementation. But before moving with our UI layer, I think we first set up our navigation, because it's very important in multi-module project, and at the same time it is typical for those who never do navigation in multi-module projects. So I try my best to elaborate you in a very simple manner. So let's get started and see how we implement nested navigation or navigation in multi-module application. So in our core, I already created this feature API, and within this feature API, you need to create an interface, and the interface name feature API. Within this feature API, I'm going to create a function, and the function name is register graph. Now this has two input. The first one is nav controller, which is nav host controller, and the second one is nav graph builder, nav graph builder. Okay, so these two things is coming up from Jetpack Compose navigation library. So I'm gonna add that implementation in our feature API build.gradle. So go here, I'm gonna add the implementation Jetpack Compose navigation. Okay, I'm gonna sync this. Alright, so sync has been completed. Go to your feature API. Now it is available. So import nav host controller and import your nav graph builder. Every feature has its own navigation graph. So in multi-module projects, we follow nested navigation. So a feature represent a simple small navigation for its own feature. Like we have this movie feature. So this movie feature contain its own navigation graph. Movie details contain its own nested navigation graph, or you can say subgraph. So now I'm gonna go back in our UI layer, and within our UI layer I want to use this feature API. So first I need to add this feature API module in our UI layer. So jump in your build.gradle movie UI, and here on the top I'm gonna write few line of code in order to connect the feature API. So project colon, we have core, within core we have our feature API. Sync now. So now go back to your UI layer, and here I'm gonna create one package, and the package name is navigation. Within this navigation I'm gonna create one interface which is specific to this feature, and the name of that interface is movie API. Okay, this is an interface and it will also extend our feature API. And here if you want to create any function which you implement, you will do, but I'm not gonna create any kind of function which we implement. So after this interface you need to create one more object, and the object name is internal movie feature API. Okay, and this will use our feature API, or you can say implement feature API. And okay, so we don't have this nav controller or nav graph builder because we didn't add the dependency for that in our UI module. So go to your feature API, copy this dependency, go to your UI layer, build.gradle, paste this thing, sync now, and after the syncing you will see these two things is recognizable. So now you have your register graph. So it is the right time to register our movie feature nested navigation graph with our route. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use our nav graph builder. So we have our nav graph builder which we pass from this function, and in this we have navigation. Okay, we need to pass here start destination. So pass your start destination, and the second one is route. Okay, so these two things is necessary for our nested navigation. So because it is a nested navigation, it has its own route. By using that route, we recognize that this navigation is represented our movie nested navigation. Okay, so for that let us suppose I pass movie nested navigation. Simple. Now start destination, as you know, start destination is the destination which you want to show on the first time when you jump on this navigation. So within this we have composeable as usual, and suppose you want to show your movie, so route name is movie, and here if you create any kind of screen or composable screen, you will use that screen like movie screen. And the start destination is in our case it is movie. So on the first time when we navigate to this nested navigation graph, it will show us this movie screen, and this is the route of that movie screen. So it will compare if this route is present here or not with composable. So yes, it is present, so it will check. If it is equal, then it will render this screen. Okay, so using this you actually register that navigation graph in your route. So we did not finish that process right now, but we actually add this nested navigation in our route. Now it's time to go in our app module and finishing up all of the navigation setup. So in order to set up our navigation, go to your app module, and within your app module you first need to set up our dagger hilt, because without using dagger hilt you didn't use navigation in your project. So I'm gonna create one class naming base application. This is a class extend application, and annotate this thing with hilt android app, not recognizable because we don't set up dagger hilt for our app module. So I think we already did the setup for data module. So go here, copy all these stuffs, go to build.gradle module app level file, on the plugins paste this thing, again go to your data layer, copy all of this thing, go to your module app level and simply paste all this thing. Okay, sync your project. After that it will be available hilt android app in this file. Import this. Now it's time to register this application. Go to your manifest. Within our application tag we have name, register your base application. And one more thing, I'm gonna take my internet permission because we use internet in our application. All right, now it is time to create a navigation provider. So I'm gonna create a new package naming navigation, and here I'm gonna create a data class. So that data class name is navigation provider. Okay, so within this we have our APIs. Like if we have our feature movie, within this, within our UI we have movie API. Okay, so this movie API is gonna pass in our navigation provider. Okay, so while movie API, okay, this movie API is not recognizable because it is not connected to our module. So go to build.gradle module app level, and this time add implementation project and feature movie UI. Okay, sync your project and after that you will able to recognize this movie API. Movie API here is available. Alright, now it's time to provide this movie API. Now because movie API is an interface, we need to write the implementation for this movie API. So I'm going to create a class, and the class name is movie API implementation, which implement this movie API. And within this we only have register graph, and this register graph uses our internal movie feature API. So internal movie feature API register graph, and within this you need to pass your nav controller and nav graph builder. Okay, so now we will provide this implementation using Dagger Hill. So we're gonna create a dependency injection package, and within this I'm gonna create a new UI module object, install in. So we did not set up our Dagger Hill for UI module, so I'm gonna do this. So go back to your data layer, copy all these dependencies, go back to your UI layer, add these dependencies, and from data layer on the top you have these two plugins. Copy those plugins, go to your UI layer build.gradle, paste that plugins on the top, sync your project, and after that your installing has been available to you. Import your installing, and within this I'm gonna use singleton component class. This represent a Dagger module, so annotate this thing with Dagger module, and on the UI module write a provide function which provide our movie API. So return type is our movie API implementation. Okay, that's it. So now it will provide a movie API implementation, and that implementation is used in our app module. And by using this implementation we create this navigation provider data class. Okay, so in order to use this navigation provider, I'm going to create a new package, and the package name is TI. Within this I'm going to create app module object, install in singleton component class, annotate this with module, and here I'm gonna write a provide function, provide navigation provider. Return type is navigation provider, and I'm gonna return a navigation provider, but it requires movie API. So pass movie API and use this movie API here. So this movie API is gonna inject by our feature movie API dependency injection over here. Okay, so from here it will generate a movie API, and our app module navigation provider will consume that movie API. We will create few constant in order to manage our route. So that constant I will create in my common module. So go to your core, and within your core you have common, and within this common I'm gonna create one package, and the package name is navigation underscore constant. Within this I'm gonna create a file, and that file name is navigation constant. I'm gonna create an object, and I'm gonna manage my constant depending on the feature. So like we have our movie feature, so I'm gonna call this object name movie feature, and within this we have const val. So the first one is our nested route, so I'm gonna name this nested route, and the nested route value is movie nested route, and the first screen is our movie screen. So I'm gonna call the variable name is movie screen route, and I'm using the same name here, movie screen route. Okay, so we have only these two constant right now. In future we also have the movie detail feature object. Okay, so for now just leave this thing as it is. So within your build.gradle feature movie UI layer I'm gonna add this line of code implementation project, and within this we have core common sync now. and go back to your internal movie feature API. So here you see we give our start destination movie. So just replace this thing with our created constant. So movie feature, and the start destination is our movie screen route. Okay, now replace this movie nested route with our created variable. So movie feature, movie screen nested route, not movie screen route. Okay, so copy this route and paste within this composable. Alright, so now jump back in your app module, and here within navigation I'm gonna create a file which have naming app navigation. This is a file, and within this file I'm gonna create a composable naming app nav graph. Alright, so within this app nav graph I'm gonna pass my nav controller. Okay, so the dependency is not present in this build.gradle, so I'm gonna add that dependency. So go here, add implementation, and we use jetpack compose navigation. Sync now. Go back to your app navigation, and here you will see after the syncing nav controller is available. So I'm gonna use nav host controller. Okay, and the second parameter is very important parameter, which is navigation provider. All right, and within this I'm gonna create nav host, pass your nav controller, and within this graph we use start destination, and the start destination is nothing but our movie nested navigation graph. So pass that navigation route here. So the navigation route is present in our movie API, internal movie feature API, and here you can see the nested navigation route is movie feature nested route. So copy this, go back to your app navigation and paste here, but it is not recognizable. Again, module is not connected to our common. So I'm gonna go and add this in our build.gradle module app level. So we have core, and within this core we have common. Sync now, right? So import this, and within this I'm gonna use my navigation provider. So use your navigation provider. It has movie API that contain register graph. Pass your nav controller, pass your nav graph builder. Okay, so this module is not connected to our feature API module, that is why it will give me this error. So go to your build.gradle module app level and add this feature API. So this feature API is present in our core feature API. Sync now, and you will see the error would be gone. The error will be gone after the syncing. See, the error would be gone. So now we will use our app nav graph in main activity. So first I'm gonna create a composable app. Okay, and within this I'm gonna cut this surface, paste here, and we need to pass nav controller, nav host controller in this app, and create a variable naming nav controller, which is initialized with remember nav controller. Remove this navigator, and after that you call your app, pass your nav controller in it, and within this surface I'm gonna call my app nav graph, pass your nav host controller and the navigation provider. So this navigation provider is actually provided by our Dagger Hilt. So you need to use Android entry point, and on the top I'm gonna use field injection late init var navigation provider. Now this navigation provider is used in our app. So navigation provider, add this thing in your app. Now it's time to pass this navigation provider in our app navigation graph. That's it. Everything is, I think, complete for the navigation. More thing, I forgot to add internal. before this object, because we only use this internal movie feature API within this module. That is why we put internal keyword before the object. Okay, rest all the thing is fine. So I'm gonna rebuild this thing. If any error is occur, then we will fix that error too. Alright, so our Gradle build successfully finished. That means no error encounter during the build. So yep, we complete our navigation setup. Now it's time to move on with our UI module for movie feature. It's time to complete our UI layer. So within your package, create a new package naming screen. And I'm gonna create view model class, movie search, view model. Extend this with view model. And annotate this with hilt view model, because it is a view model, and we will perform constructor injection here. So private val, and we are gonna inject our use case. So get movie list use case. Okay, so it is not available because our UI module doesn't know about domain layer or domain module. So go to your build.gradle and duplicate this. I'm gonna use feature movie module, and within this movie module we have domain layer. So use our domain and sync it. Now after the syncing, you will see get movie list use case is available here. So let me import this. Get movie list use case, now it is available. Alright, after that we will create a data class which actually act as a stakeholder for our Jetpack Compose screen. So within this screen I'm gonna create that data class. So name would be movie search state holder. We have first variable naming is loading, type boolean, initial value false. Second is our actual data. In my case it is a list of movie. Make sure you import the right one and initialize it with null. The last one is our error message. So if any kind of error occur, though we will receive message from our use case, and that message is gonna store in this data class error variable. Okay, jump back to your movie search view model, and I'm gonna create a private val movie list variable, which is a mutable state of our stakeholder type. So movie search stakeholder. Okay, now we will create a variable naming movie list, which is a type of state, and the type would be same movie search stakeholder. Initialize this with underscore movie list. Import this state. Alright, so I'm going to create one more variable which is actually used to store our query, which user type. So underscore query, which is a type of mutable state flow, and the type would be string. Initialize with mutable state flow empty string. Create a variable naming query, and this time it is a type of state, not state flow, and here the type would be same string, and initialize this with upper query. Alright, so now we have two variables. The first one is actually contain the stakeholder, second one is contain our query. Now I'm gonna create a function get movie list, and within this we pass our API key, which is a type of string, and second is our actual query. We use view model scope to launch the coroutine, and here we will use our use case. So get movie list use case, and within this we pass our API key and the query, and we use on each. So on each is basically trigger every time when anything is emitted from our get movie list use case. Now I'm gonna launch this thing in our view model scope. So within our on each, you see we got a UI event. So I'm gonna use when expression pass our it, and I'm gonna check its type. So suppose the type is loading, and we have two more states like we got error or we got success. So in loading case, we are gonna use our movie list value and update that value with a new movie search stakeholder, and this time the is loading value would be true, not false. Now copy this, paste in your error case, and for error case the error message would be new one. So error it dot message. So this message is coming up from our use case. Alright, so just like this, go to your success event, and here this time we will pass the data. So it dot data. So this is a completion of our get movie list. So basically we trigger our use case, and on each emission we run this piece of code. It will check our event. If the loading event, it will simply update our movie list value with the new state holder, and if it is a case of loading, then is loading is true. If it is a case of error, we will get error message. If it is a case of success, we will get our actual data. So after that, I'm going to create one more function naming set query, and within this we pass string, and we're gonna update our query. So query dot value is s. Okay, so I'm gonna use init block, and within this init block I'm using vModel scope launch. Basically we launch a coroutine, and I'm gonna use my query dot debounce. So basically debounce is used to produce a delay. Suppose your user type ABC instantly, then we don't wanna make 3 API call. Instead we wait for some time. If user doesn't type for 1 second, then we trigger our API. So for that case I wanna use my debounce. Okay, and after that we collect the latest changes, or you can say latest value of underscore query, and we will call our get movie list and pass our API key. So API key is not there, pass your query. So I'm gonna create a simple variable naming API key. So you will use your API and I'm gonna use my API. Okay, so that's it. Everything is finished from our view model side. Now I'm gonna create one more file for our composable. So I'm gonna call this thing movie screen. This is a file, and here I'm gonna create a composable naming movie screen. The input or the parameter would be our view model, movie search view model. So first thing, I'm gonna create a variable naming result and use our view model movie list value. So basically our result is now containing the value of movie list, and the second one is our query. So view model dot query dot. So we are going to collect this in a form of state, because if our query will change, we want that our composable is recomposed, because we need to update our text field. That is why. All right, so we don't have the compose dependencies in our build.gradle. So in order to add all the dependencies which we need for compose, what I am doing, simply create a new activity. Now this is a trick. You will use this trick, or you will use whatever you know. So go to your gallery, empty compose activity, next finish this. So it will automatically add all the required dependency for Jetpack Compose which we want. Alright, so go to your build.gradle movie UI layer. So here you can see it add a lot of dependencies. So what I'm gonna do, go my module app level build.gradle and copy this all stuff, come back and paste that stuff here, because it exactly the same. Remove this thing because it already present on the top. Let's sync your project again and come back in our movie screen. So I'm gonna use scaffold here. So within our scaffold we have top bar. So in the top bar we will use text field. So it require value and a on value change. So in order to use value, I'm using my query value, and within our on value change I'm gonna use my view model dot set query and pass the string. Okay, and within our scaffold scope I'm gonna use log d, because this error is coming up because we didn't use this padding value. So I'm gonna log at this padding values, error would be gone. It's time to manage our all three state, like loading state, error state, and the success state. So first I'm gonna use my result.isLoading. If it is true, then I'm gonna create a box modifier, fill max size, and my content alignment is on the center. It will contain a circular progress indicator. Similarly, like this, we have result.error. If it is not blank, that means something is, the initial value error is empty string. But if it is not empty, that means error will be there during the execution of our REST API or use cases. So I'm going to create a box, and this box is taking all of our space. Content alignment is on the center, and lastly we have our text. Now this text is actually show me the error message. So I'm gonna use result.error. That's it. This is our error message. Now import our text. So now it's time to manage our success state. So in order to check whether our state is success or not, I'm gonna use my result data and check if it is not null, because initially it was null. If it is not null, that means something is initialized. So I'm gonna check first thing if our list is empty. So we don't have list, we have it. If it is empty, that means empty list coming back from our web service. So I'm gonna use box modifier, fill max size, and my content alignment would be on the center. And again I'm gonna use text and simply show that nothing found. Okay, and if it is not the case, then we are going to use something which is called lazy vertical grid. So use lazy vertical grid. So it require column. So in order to initialize this, I'm gonna use grid cells dot adaptive, and we pass our minimum size, which is 128 dp. Now import this, and within our content, it's just like a lazy column content. We have items, and within this you need to pass your list which you wanna render on our lazy vertical grid. So I want to render my result.data, basically list of movies. So pass your list of movies here, import this. Now you will see it will give me movie. Basically in this trailing lambda, it will give one by one movie, and we are going to render that movie. So I'm gonna create my list item. So we have a box, and this box has a modifier, and within this modifier I'm gonna give height 200 dp, and lastly I'm gonna provide border. So the border width is 1 dp, and I'm gonna provide color of white. Okay, now within this I'm gonna use async image. So async image is something which is coming up from coil library. So go to your build.cradle, and here I'm gonna add that dependency. So implementation coil image library, coil image loading library, and use coil. So now it's time to use our async image. So in model you need to pass the URL. So my URL is coming from it.image URL, and my content description is null, and I'm gonna use content scale, which is fit. Alright, so this is our simple list item. Now come back in our scaffold top bar, and within this we have our text field. Now I'm gonna change the behavior of text field. So for that I'm gonna use something which is called colors, and within this we have text field default. So because I'm using text field, so I'm gonna choose text field color, and within this we have a lot of parameters where we passed our color. So I'm gonna use disable indicator color as a transparent, and I'm gonna use my focused indicator color is also color dot transparent. Alright, and lastly I'm gonna use placeholder. So my placeholder is simply say search movie. Okay, and we have trailing icon. So this trailing icon is basically show me the search icon. So in our image vector, I'm gonna use icons default search, and the content description again null. Okay, so this is our text field. So this text field has a a finite width, but I want that text field is gonna take whole of the width. So in order to provide the whole width, I'm gonna use modifier fill max width. All right, that's it. So now it's time to use this movie screen in our internal movie feature API. So go in our internal movie feature API, and here I'm gonna use our movie screen. It requires view model, so we are gonna initialize this view model. So while view model, use hilt view model. Okay, so we don't have the dependency. Go to your build.gradle UI package, and here use that implementation dagger hilt dot, and you will see this hilt compose navigation. Simply sync. Now import this and simply pass this view model here. Okay, so we need to pass the type. So the type would be movie search view model. All right, so now go back to your build.gradle, and here everything is fine. All right, so now it's time to execute our application and see whether it is running or not. So we got an error. The error would be the version 1.2.0 of a compose compiler require 1.7.0. so basically this Kotlin compiler extension version is 1.2.0, but we use compose UI version 1.4.0 alpha 05. So in order to use that UI version, you have to change this Kotlin compiler extension version from 1.2.0 to 1.4.0. And I found few more issues. The main issue is present in our core network and within our data providers. We have our API service .get movie list, and this is the place where I make mistake, a silly mistake. So in order to fix this, go to your dependency injection network module, and here you will see this 3 is also present here. And in our API service, I also add this 3 in here, and this is our actual URL. So you will see this 3 is 2 times. So what we will do, go back in our network module and remove this 3 from here. Okay, now it will work. We will do one more thing in our app module, because we will use dagger hilt in our data layer and domain layer of a movie feature. So this module must be connected to our app module, otherwise our dagger hilt dependency will not resolved. So in our module app level, I'm gonna add these 2 layer. So movie domain and the movie data. Now sync your project and run this application again. So our app executed successfully. In the first time, because our query is empty, it will return us empty list, so it is fine. Now when I type Harry in our emulator, let us see what will be the response. Okay, so it will return something, but we saw nothing. This is because our image URL is only contain the poster path. It doesn't contain the exactly image URL. So we need to modify a little bit in our mapper class. So go to your mapper, which is present in our data layer. So within this mapper, we have this it poster path. Only we have poster path. We don't have the full URL. So we have to convert this poster path into full URL. I'm gonna create a function naming make full URL, send our path into it, and here this is our actual URL, and at the end I'm gonna utilize my path. So I'm gonna use this make full URL here. Now it will return me the full URL, or you can say full image URL. Now I'm gonna execute my application again and see whether it is working or not. Alright, so our app execute, and when I type Harry, let us see the response. Alright, so we successfully got the response from our backend. Now we will complete our movie detail screen. So we need to look into our REST API. So this is our REST API, and this REST API requires the movie ID. So first I'm gonna copy this, come back to our project, and within our API service which is present in our network module, I'm gonna write a function. So this is a get method, and within this I'm gonna pass movie slash the ID. So ID is dynamic, so that's why I am using pair of parentheses and pass our ID. So this ID is actually we're gonna pass during the runtime. Suspend function get movie details. So in order to pass this ID at runtime, we use path, and within this path make sure the name which you put here is exactly same. So this is the ID in a form of string, and the second one is API key. So our API key is passed in a form of query. So I'm gonna create a query for that, pass our API underscore key, and here our API key. Okay, so what is the return type of this function? So in order to generate a return type, go back to your API, hit this API, you're gonna get this response, and I'm gonna use this response and format it very well here with the help of jsonformatter.org. So I'm gonna copy all this thing, come back in our project, and within this model I'm gonna create a new model for that. So paste all this thing, and here I'm gonna call this movie details DTO generate class. Okay, so this is our movie details DTO. Go back to your API service, and the return type of this is movie details DTO. It's time to write our data providers. So go in our data providers package, and within this we have movie data providers, and I'm gonna create one function within this get movie details. Okay, so first parameter is our string, and the second one is our API key. Okay, and this will access our API service, not API key. API service get movie details, pass your ID and your API key. Okay, so by doing this we actually complete the implementation of our network module. It's time to go in our movie details feature. So first I want to jump in our domain layer, and within our domain layer I'm going to create few packages. So the first package is our repository package, and within this I'm going to create one more package naming use cases, and after that we need our dependency injection. And yeah, I think this is all we need to create. Now within our repository I'm going to create a interface naming movie details repo. Okay, so this is an interface, and within this I'm going to create a suspend function naming get movie details. All right, so first parameter is our ID, second one is our API key. Okay, and the return type will be movie details. So this movie details is actually refer our domain layer model. So in order to create this movie details, create a new package, and the package name would be model, and within this model I'm going to create a data class, and the name of data class will be of course the movie details. And within this I'm gonna require few parameters like the movie title, its description, and its image URL. I'm gonna make it very simple for you. So yeah, these three things I need. So movie details contain title, description, and image URL. That's it. Go back to your repository now, import this. All right, so now we are going to implement this interface in our data layer. So in order to access movie details repository in our data layer, we first connect our data layer to domain layer. Otherwise data layer doesn't know about this repository. So go back to your build.gradle of your data layer. So here we have our movie details data layer, and within this I'm gonna connect this module basically to our domain layer module. So implementation project, and within this we have feature, and the feature name is movie details, and I want to connect with our domain layer. Sync this. So I'm gonna copy paste all this dependency from our movie feature data module. build.gradle. So we have here. Now copy all these dependencies and paste here. And one more thing, we require some plugins because I'm gonna use Tiger Hilt in here. So for that, again go back to your movie feature data module and copy this plugins, come back and add those plugins. More thing, we also require our core network module because within this we have our data providers. So also we need to connect that. So in order to connect that, we have our core, and within this core we have network module. Now sync it, and after that we will continue writing our data module code. So now go back to your movie details data layer, and within this I'm gonna create few packages. Of course, the first one is our repository, second one is our mapper. So this mapper is actually used to map, or you can say modify, our DTO in the form of our domain layer model. So I'm gonna create this. So first I will implement our movie details repository. So create a class, and the class name is movie details repo implementation. Movie details repository. Okay, so now implement the get movie details. We require our data providers. So I'm gonna inject data providers here. So private val movie data providers, import this inject, and it's time to use our movie data providers. So movie data providers dot get movie details, pass your ID and API key and return this. Okay, so the return type, I think the return type is movie details DTO, but we need movie details. So I'm gonna create a file within our mappers, and the file name is mappers. And within this I'm gonna create a function, extension function basically. So movie details DTO to domain. Return type of this is movie details. Return movie details. So we need title. So first I will use the title parameters, and within this I'm using this dot original title. Okay, the second one is our description. So this dot we have overview, and we have our image URL. So this dot poster path. So this is actually containing the poster path. We need the URL. So we already did this conversion in our movie feature. So I'm gonna use that thing here. So within our movie feature we have data module, and within this data module we have our mappers, and within this mapper we actually use this function to convert that poster path to URL. So I'm gonna copy this, come back here, and sorry, not here, within our mapper, and paste this function. I'm gonna use this function make full URL and pass our this dot poster path. Okay, now I'm gonna use this to domain in our movie details repository. This is the complete implementation of our movie details repository. Now within our data module I'm gonna create a package for dependency injection and create a module. So the module is data module object. I'm gonna install in singleton component. This is a module, so annotate this thing with module, and it's time to provide. So provide our movie detail repo, movie details repository, return our implementation simply. So the requirement of this repository implementation is movie data providers, so use it. So movie data providers, pass movie data providers here. By doing this we actually inject our movie details repository where we need. Alright, so now come back in our domain layer, and within our domain layer We have our use cases. So within our use cases, I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is movie detail use case. So movie detail use case. So actually we wanna get the movie details, so the use case name will be get movie detail use case. This is a class. In our use case, I'm gonna create a operator function invoke, and it require id and our API key, and the return type will be flow, and this flow contain the UI event, and actual data is movie details. I'm gonna use my flow builder, and within this flow builder, first I'm gonna emit our loading event. So we have UI event dot loading, and if everything goes well, I'm gonna again use this emit UI event dot success, and within this success we use our repository. So in order to use our repository, I'm gonna use constructor injection and pass our repository here. So we have movie details repo, import this. Okay, so library is not imported in our build.gradle. So in order to use dagger hilt here, I'm gonna copy paste the required dependency in our build.gradle, paste here, and we also need to add these plugins. So add those plugins, sync your project, come back to your get movie detail use case. Now after the syncing, inject is available, and now use our movie details repository, get movie detail, pass your ID and API key. And by the way, if any error occur during the communication from our server, we use this catch, and within this catch I'm also emit some UI event, and this time the UI event would be error. So we pass the error message, and I wanna execute this flow in our dispatcher.io. Okay, so this is the complete implementation of our get movie detail use case. Now I wanna provide this use case for our view model, which is present in our UI layer. So for that, again I'm gonna use my dagger hilt dependency injection framework, and within this di package I'm gonna create our UI module. So this is an object, and I'm gonna install this thing in our singleton component class, and lastly annotate this with module and provide this. So provide function provide get movie detail use case. So our get movie detailed use case required the movie details repository. So pass here, return type would be get movie detail use case, and simply return this. Alright, so this is the implementation of our use case. So we actually complete our data layer and domain layer. Now it's time to move on with our UI layer. So we need few dependencies in our build.gradle. So we already did everything in our movie feature UI layer. So I'm gonna copy everything, or you can say every dependency from our movie feature UI layer. So this is our movie feature UI layer build.gradle. So all the dependencies I'm gonna copy and paste in our movie details UI layer. So in order to use Compose, we need few things in our Android. So within our Android, we need few things in order to use Jetpack Compose in our UI layer. So go back to your feature movie UI layer, and here we have packaging option, compose option, build feature, and Kotlin option. Copy this, come back to your movie details feature UI layer, and just paste the copied thing. Write the plugin for our dagger hilt, so that is why it will throw me an error. So write the plugins for your dagger hilt. So copy this, come back to your UI layer and paste, sync again, So Gradle build sync successfully. Now I wanna come back in our UI layer and create few packages. So the first package would be related to our navigation. Then the second package we have which contain our screens, and yep, the last one would be our dagger hilt. So within our navigation I'm gonna create a object, and the object name would be internal movie details API, and this is actually implement the feature API. Implement this. Okay, so we have register graph function within this feature API. Now it's time to implement this. So I'm gonna use my nav graph builder navigation, and we need to pass a route and the start destination. And within this we utilize this composable function, and within this composable we pass the route. So I'm gonna use few constant to store all the start destination route and everything, which we already did in our movie feature. So within our core we have common, and within this common we have navigation constant package, and within this we have navigation constant. So just like this I'm gonna create one more object, and this time the object name would be movie details feature const well. So the first thing is our nested route. So I'm gonna name this movie details nested route. And the second one is our screen route. So we have movie detail screen route. Now this route is movie details, and in order to pass ID as an argument we use slash and then after pair of parentheses, and within this we pass our ID. Okay, so in order to use this, go back to your internal movie details API, and here first I wanna use my movie, not movie feature, it's movie detail feature, and within this we have our movie details nested route. So pass our nested route, and the start destination would be movie detail screen route. Okay, so copy this, paste in our composable, and within this we have to pass our screen which we want to render when the route is movie detail screen route. So first I wanna take back the ID from our argument. So we have it dot arguments get string pass your key which is ID, and after that we will create a screen, and that screen is going to be passed within this composable block. So it will render that screen in our user interface. Okay, so this is the implementation of our internal movie details API. In this navigation I want to create a file, and the file name would be movie details API. So this is a file, and within this file we have interface, and the interface name is movie detail API which use our feature API. And now it's time to implement this movie detail API. So I'm going to create a class, and the class name would be movie details API implementation. We already did everything in our movie feature. So if you got any confusion, so watch the part first again, so it will help you to understand very well what I am doing right now. So now it will implement this movie details API. So it also contains the register graph, and this time I will utilize my internal movie details API dot register graph and pass everything. Okay, and I will provide this implementation with dagger hilt, so that we will use this in our app module. So within our dagger hilt package I'm going to create a object, and the object name would be UI module, install in singleton component, and within this we provide our movie detail API, return type would be movie detail API, and we return the implementation. That's it. Okay, so this is a part in which we completed our navigation thing for movie details feature, for movie details UI layer. Now it's time to implement our screen package. So in screen package we have two things, our view model and our Jetpack Compose screen. So first I'm gonna create my view model, which is movie details view model, and it will extend the view model. Import this view model, and I'm gonna use constructor injection, and within this constructor I'm gonna pass private while my use case. So get movie detail use case. Okay, import this inject. And one more thing, in your build.gradle we actually use this implementation project for movie. Okay, so make sure to change this implementation project to feature movie details domain. Okay, otherwise you will access the movie feature domain layer, which doesn't contain our movie detail use case. Now come back to your movie detail view model. So the first thing, I'm going to create a stakeholder class. So stakeholder class is actually used to manage our Jetpack Compose screen states. So this is a data class, and the name would be movie detail state holder. And within this we have variable is loading, type boolean, initial value false, second would be error, type string, and initial value would be empty. Last one is our data, and this time the data would be movie details, and I'm gonna initialize this with null. Come back to your movie details view model, and within this I'm gonna create a private while underscore movie details, and initialize this with mutable state of the movie details state holder. And I'm gonna create a variable which we used in our Jetpack Compose screen. So the name would be movie details, and this time this is a state which contain our movie detail state holder, and initialize this with upper movie details. So by doing this, our movie details is not changeable outside from the view model. And I'm gonna create a function naming get movie details, and within this we pass our id form of string. What happened to me? And the second one is our API key, also type of string. Okay, and within this I'm gonna utilize my get movie detail use case, pass our id and API key, and on each emission. So basically this on is trigger every time when our use case uses emit, and I'm gonna launch this in view model scope. So this will give me a UI event. So I'm gonna use when, pass our it, check the type of our UI event. So we have three types. So the first one is our loading. Okay, so during the time of loading I'm gonna update my movie detail mutable state with movie detail state holder, and I'm gonna convert this is loading to true. Okay, similarly we have error. So this error is coming from our UI event, make sure. And this time I'm gonna copy this, paste here, and message from our use case. So pass that message in our movie detail value. We have success event. So UI event success, if it is success case, that means we receive successfully data from our backend, and this time we pass data, it dot data. That's it. This is a use of our get movie details. All right, so I'm gonna use init block here, and within this init we actually use save state handle. So in order to use save state handle, pass that save state handle here. Okay, save state handle. So it will contain the information of our argument which we sent from movie screen to movie detail screen. So I'm gonna use save state handle dot, and here you will see we have get. So instead of using get, I'm gonna use get live data. So we receive the data type string. This is the key would be id, because we pass id as a parameter to our route, and I'm gonna observe this forever. And when we receive successfully the id, I'm gonna first check this is not null, and then after I call the get movie details. Okay, pass our id and our API key. So make sure you pass your own API key. Complete implementation of our view model. Now it's time to write our composable screens. So I'm gonna create a new file, and the file name would be movie detail screen. This is a file, and this file contain composable naming movie detail screen, and input would be id, which is a type of string, and second one is our view model, which is a type of movie detail view model. First thing, I'm going to create a variable naming result and utilize my view model dot movie details value. We have scaffold, and I want a top app bar, so create a top app bar, and within this top app bar we have title. So the title contains the text composable which has text naming movie details. Okay, so in order to remove this error, we want to use the padding values. So I'm gonna use logcat so that the error would be not appear again. All right, so I'm gonna use this result variable. So result dot, if it is a loading case, so first we'll check if result is loading. If it is a case, I'm gonna create a box and use modifier fill max size, and make sure our content alignment is on the center and show a circular progress indicator. Import this modifier. So this is a case of loading. If our result dot error is not blank, that means we got some error from our REST API. So I'm gonna use box modifier fill max size and make sure my content alignment is on the center, and I'm gonna use within this a text, and that text contain the message. So basically result error. Okay, so these two cases is for our loading and for our error. Now it's time to write our success use case. So if, or you can say the result dot data is not null. Okay, so if it is not null, I'm gonna create a column. Okay, and I'm gonna use modifier to use the complete size, or you can say utilize the whole screen fill max size, and within this I'm gonna make this column scrollable. So I'm gonna use vertical scroll and pass remember scroll state. Okay, and within this I'm gonna use coil image library. So I already add dependency for that in our build.kdl. So here you will see coil image library. So I'm gonna utilize this in our screen. So we have something called async image, and within this we need to pass our URL. So it dot image URL, and within our content description I pass null, and I'm gonna use modifier to provide the height and width. So the width would be fill max width, and the height would be 300 dp. Okay, so after that we have content scale. So I wanna use crop, content scale crop. Okay, so this is a async image. Now within this, or so below to async image, I'm gonna create a box modifier fill max just below to our async image. I'm gonna create a box modifier fill max width, and within this I'm gonna again create a column modifier fill max width, and I'm gonna create two texts. So the first text which actually show the title. So we have it dot title, and below to this title we have it dot description. That's it. And I'm gonna use style for that, which is coming from our material theme dot typography dot body one, and for our title I'm gonna use h5. Okay, so now I'm gonna use this movie detail screen in our navigation. So within our internal movie details API, we need to pass our movie detail screen. So it require ID, so pass ID to string, and in place of view model, I'm gonna create a variable naming view model and use hilt view model to initialize this. Okay, pass the type which is movie details view model. That's it, pass your view model here. Okay, so this is a complete implementation of our movie details feature. Okay, now I'm gonna use this thing in our app module. So go back to your app module. So first thing first, in our build.gradle app module, build.gradle module app level, copy this implementation project, paste here, and you need to did this thing for our movie details. If you don't do this, your dagger hilt won't work. You will get a compile time errors. Sync now. Now go back to your app module navigation, and within this navigation we have navigation provider. Okay, so here I'm gonna pass my movie details API. So movie details API, and also in our dependency injection module we need to pass our movie details. So movie details, I think now you got a complete idea why we use movie details API. Okay, so pass this movie detail API and go to your app navigation, and here we have our nav host, and within this nav host we have navigation providers movie API, which actually register our movie API within this nav host. Now I'm gonna use this navigation provider dot movie details API, use register graph, and pass our nav controller and graph builder. That's it. So we successfully add our movie details nested navigation in our nav host. Okay, now it's time to route from our movie screen to movie detail screen. Okay, so in order to do that, go to your movie feature, and within this go to your UI, and within your UI we have our screen. So go back to your screen, which is movie screen, and here we need to create a clickable event. So within our list item, so we have our list item only async image. So within this async image I'm gonna use modifier clickable. Okay, so we need a nav controller. So we didn't have nav controller in our screen, so we need to pass that in our movie screen. So go to your internal movie feature API, and within our movie screen pass this nav controller. Come back to your movie screen and add that argument here, nav controller. Go back to your clickable event, nav controller dot navigate, and here you need to pass your route. So it is movie details slash the ID. So we need to pass the ID. So in order to pass ID, it dot image URL. So it actually contain only the image URL, because in our mapper class we only use image URL. So in order to use this route we need to pass the ID. So ID is not present right now in our domain layer object. So I'm gonna change few things in our domain layer and data layer. So within our domain layer we have model, and within this model we have our movie. So make sure add ID here, and go back to your data layer of movie feature, and within this we have mapper classes, so which actually pass this poster path. Now we also pass the ID of our movie. So it dot ID, make sure to convert this into string. Now go back to your movie screen, and now you will have the access of ID. Okay, so this is all you need to do in order to route from this movie screen to movie detail screen. That's it. All right, so now everything is set. I think I need to run this application. Our app executed successfully. I also search Harry Potter in them, and when I click any of the movie, you will see the movie details. Okay, so this is a complete implementation of our movie detail feature. Okay, so I made few very small mistakes, which is the first one is here. So I forgot to add 3 in our endpoint, so make sure you add that. And also in our movie detail view model, I forgot to add @hilt view model. So this will give me an error. So if you're facing that error too, so please complete everything and then execute our application. It works very well. This is the last part of our multi-module crash course series. I hope you like this video, and if you like this video, subscribe to my channel and also buy me a super thanks. Okay, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for your time.